The following presentation of City Cinematheque is made possible, in part, by the support of the French Cultural Services. Visit www.frenchculture.org. Welcome to City Cinematheque, where the art and pleasure of the movies are the subject of serious discussion. I'm your host, Jerry Carlson, and I teach film studies at the City College of the City University of New York. Today, it's our pleasure to present the 1984 French film, A Sunday in the Country, directed by Bertrand Tavernier, whose work we're celebrating over several weeks here on City Cinematheque. If you've ever thought what it would be like to step into a film that looked and felt like an Impressionist painting, well, the day has come. That is A Sunday in the Country. It's a tribute to the life of a fictional painter and what happens to him as an elderly man when his family visits one beautiful autumn day in the countryside of France. To talk about the film, we have the pleasure of welcoming back to CUNY TV Professor Annette Insdorf from Columbia University, a well-known, in fact, world-class expert on French cinema. Now, enjoy the pleasures of A Sunday in the Country. Welcome back from the French countryside to our discussion section on City Cinematheque. It's a pleasure to welcome back here at CUNY TV, a longtime friend of the series, Professor Annette Insdorf, who's Director of Undergraduate Film Studies at Columbia University. Many of our viewers will know her from her many writings, which include a book on film and the Holocaust, Francois Truffaut, Krzysztof Kieslowski, and most recently she's been contributing to what I call really a new form of 21st century scholarship, and that is the scholarly critical commentaries that are added to DVDs, so we can learn more about the films by interacting with them. Glad to have you here, Annette.
Thank you.
So let's talk about this film and French culture and French artists. I mean, film artists, painters, etc. This is a film that takes place after the turn of the century, after the high moments of Impressionism. What do you take about the relationship between the visual tradition and this film? What strikes you about that?
Well, one of the most remarkable things about A Sunday in the Country is the rich visual texture, which calls back, in a certain sense, to the entire tradition of French painting in the shift from Impressionist, well, the shift before Impressionist painting to Impressionist and after. Each shot of the film is like a perfectly composed tableau. However, the first time I saw it, I erroneously thought of it as an Impressionist film, and it was only the second time when I went back and watched it again that I realized, no, the sharpness of the colors and of the visual texture make it anything but the blurry, as Monsieur l'Admiral puts it, texture that we associate with Impressionist paintings. Now, the name Renoir obviously comes to mind when we're watching it, and the only question is whether to put the emphasis on Auguste le Père Renoir or Jean le Fils Renoir, the painter or the filmmaker. Because A Sunday in the Country, for me, is almost an homage to both of these great French artists. Towards the end of the film, when Irène takes her father to dance in the Guinguette, you know, in that typically French outdoor place, it is impossible not to think of Renoir's painting. You actually have the kind of characters, you have the kind of cropping of life at the very edge of the frame but continuing past it that was so much a trademark of the father's paintings and became a trademark of his son Jean's filmmaking. That sense of a fluid frame, the sense of how much more is being lived just beyond the border that we can see. And incidentally, even the title. Un dimanche à la campagne, a Sunday in the country, calls back to Une partie de campagne, which was Jean Renoir's great film translated here as A Day in the Country.
Right.
And of course, this is not the title of the source novel from which Tavernier was working by Pierre Bost, called Monsieur l'Admiral va bientôt mourir. Monsieur l'Admiral will die soon. So he chose a title that is so much more in keeping with the great tradition of French artists before him. And I would add one little detail. There's even a picnic on the grass.
Indeed.
Although it is not in the so-called diegesis of the film in terms of the present tense, towards the end, when Irène imagines the flashback of the picnic on the grass, there they are, as if it were a painting by Renoir, or perhaps a film by his son Jean.
No. I think you bring up this very interesting point about the way the film is told. Now, there's many films that reference other epics, but usually they do it in this way that stops the story in some way. It's a kind of show-offy moment, you know, oh, look what I've done in this way. Whereas here, we have this constant fluid sense of the reference that's always ongoing. We don't really stop the frame so much in that way, and that, as you've so well articulated, is consistent with actually the kind of aesthetics of constant change that is part of Impressionism. How is it you deal with something that is not constant but actually is a matter of change? Always. There's always something else happening here or there. There's always the adventitious detail, the thing that you didn't plan upon in exactly those ways. Also, you brought up something very interesting that's worth going back to, and that is the novel and the novelist. Tell us a little bit more about his relationship, Tavernier, with Pierre Bost.
Well, the name Pierre Bost is fairly charged in terms of film history, for one simple reason that has little to do with Pierre Bost and everything to do with François Truffaut, and that is that Pierre Bost, together with his screenwriting partner Jean Orange, wrote many classic films, especially adaptations of the sort of late 40s through the 1950s. These included Stendhal's Le Rouge et le Noir, the Red and the Black, Forbidden Games, The Devil in the Flesh. And when François Truffaut started his stint as a rather feisty and occasionally vindictive film critic in the 1950s, he singled out for special scorn the writing team of Orange and Bost because he felt that they were emblematic of everything that was wrong with the French film industry. The very polished, literate screenplays, the studio movies with the production values of, elegant characters in predictable situations. And he even, I think, took offense at the liberal political cast that sometimes entered these films when they were adapting material that wasn't inherently political to begin with. So when Truffaut, in Une certaine tendance du cinéma français, this was his famous article, A Certain Tendency of the French Cinema, he attacked what he called le cinéma de papa, daddy's cinema. Yeah. And there was Pierre Bost, vilified. Tavernier always felt that this was deeply unfair. And in fact, there's a fine documentary about Truffaut called Stolen Portraits, Portraits Volés, where you see Tavernier really kind of laying into Truffaut for what he did to Bost and Orange. Tavernier, on the other hand, not only used Pierre Bost as his co-screenwriter for his first classic film, The Clockmaker, L'Horloger de Saint-Paul, and then for other films, but went to Bost's novel for this, which I consider to be his greatest film. I think Tavernier made many fascinating films, but my own personal favorite, my temperamental favorite, is Un dimanche à la campagne. And he co-wrote it with his wife, Colo Tavernier, the screenplay, using Pierre Bost as the point of departure.
Right. And it's interesting that his film has actually revived some modest interest in Bost, because Bost had a career before he became a screenplay writer. In the 20s and the 30s, he was actually one of those very well-regarded novelists of the period who had slipped out of print. But by bringing this back, there are now some people who are saying, well, wait a minute, there may be, not only should we be looking at these films that, again, you know, when you're a young artist, etc., there's always that need to kill daddy, or at least throw him in the closet for a while. And so now we need to recover that cinema of quality, which was a cinema of quality, quite different from the goals and needs of the new wave, but a cinema we can really learn a lot from and still enjoy in every possible way. And then we can even take it further back, and somebody like Bost, whose literary accomplishment is underappreciated today, but very much appreciated by Bertrand Tavernier.
Oh, yeah. See, one of the things that I find very interesting about A Sunday in the Country is that it invokes Truffaut on a certain level at the same time that it is inherently celebrating someone that Truffaut vilified. Don't forget that Tavernier began his career, much like Truffaut, as a film critic. He was writing articles about film. In addition, he was a publicist. Right. I love the fact that he was an attaché de presse in France for not just the French, Godard and Chabrol, but for American filmmakers like Sam Fuller, somebody that Truffaut revered as well, by the way. And so there's always been, I think, in Tavernier's cinema, an indication that he is a deeply intelligent man. I won't say an intellectual, because that almost taints him a little bit, but somebody whose cinema is thoughtful and reflective, continuing his writing about film. And much like Truffaut, I believe that he loved to rediscover forgotten masters, whether of film, American cinema included, or literature.
Absolutely.
So just as Truffaut created a market for the novels of Henri Pierre-Rocher by adapting his novels Jules and Jim and Two English Girls, so Tavernier has, in a sense, done that for Bost. And by the way, Orange, the co-writer, he even gave him an acting part in his film of a few years ago called Safe Passage, Laissez Passer. So he really has rehabilitated both of them. But with Truffaut, I mean, if you look at Un Dimanche à la Campagne, alongside Truffaut's Two English Girls or Jules and Jim, there really is so much more that links them than what separates them. For example, Tavernier, it's his own voice, occasionally narrating, just as Truffaut's own voice can be heard in many of his films, and it's a very calm, dispassionate narration. And I find it interesting that A Sunday in the Country begins with a line spoken on a black screen, voiceover. When will you stop asking so much of life, Irene? And that's exactly how Truffaut began Jules and Jim. A line spoken off by Jean Moreau. So obviously, Tavernier has had an interesting love-hate relationship with Truffaut, as well as the relationship with Renoir and with Pierre Bost.
Well, and you bring up this very interesting, point of these formal parallels. Also, there's a parallel in their sense of curiosity and their humanistic vision, but also in contrast to someone like Godard, who uses very strong distancing devices at times. It just knocks you back to think in a lot of ways. The use of their voices and this narration is so interesting in its sort of framing of the artifice of the film, but it's a loving framing. That is, we can dip in and outside of the characters like a novelist, but we're made aware of the degree to which there's a great care in the recreation of this era, and it is someone who's been thinking about it. But it's not to shock us out of it. It's to readjust our distance from the story at different times.
Well, actually, I tend to, in general, dislike voiceover narration because I consider it to often be a literary crutch that directors sometimes resort, and screenwriters resort to voiceover when they haven't succeeded in expressing something in completely visual terms. This time, however, in watching again A Sunday in the Country, this was my third time, I realized that some of the sentiments expressed by the voiceover could not have been put in any other way. At one moment, his voice says, tous les chagrins se ressemblent, all sorrows resemble one another. There's a deep poignancy to a line like that. and when he talks about how the son felt like a rejected lover. I mean, yes, it is already in the performances, it's in the directing, it's in everything, but those lines for me didn't feel redundant. They felt like a complementary layer to the text. And this is not a movie that I think is terribly interested in distancing us all that much. I think it's a very classic film. It has the unity of time and space
absolutely.
that was revered by centuries of French artists
Right.
and critics before Tavernier. Everything takes place within 24 hours, within one basic location. And what I love about this film is that, on the one hand, it is so specific to its time and place. Pre-World War I, the exquisite costumes and decor of the French countryside. But on the other hand, the story it tells is utterly universal and timeless. A line like "all sorrows resemble one another" transcends any particular place or story. And I think the way that Tavernier enriches the film, despite the fact that he's staying within the 24-hour in place, is that he includes those 3 imagined flashbacks,
Indeed.
as well as 1 imagined flash forward. I'm using the word imagined because we don't know whether the scene that we are watching really took place the way somebody is remembering them, because it's not cut, we see the past back to the present.
Right, exactly.
It shares the space. And there is something jarring. The most jarring moment in the film for me is when Monsieur l'Admiral is with his son, and suddenly he's lying on his bed as
Absolutely.
if dead, and you're going, whoa, what happened? And then you're back.
Yeah. So one of the ways of thinking about that is there's a little ambiguity. Is this the son imagining exactly what he sees as the inevitable outcome, taken from the title of the novel that you translated, that Mr. l'Admiral will die soon, and this is the son's imagining of one of the duties that will soon come. But then also we have this narrator who is looking into the lives, and so it doesn't create an ambiguity that's stressful in any way. But it's that, like, okay, is this looking back over or is this looking forward? But from either way, we know what the result is.
Actually, I think that one of the poignant themes of this film, as well as Tavernier's other great film, Life and Nothing But, La
Yes.
Vie et Rien d'autre, it's the combination of ephemerality and regret. In other words, what we're talking about now, I think, takes its meaning from the fact that these are very engaging characters who recognize that life is passing very quickly.
Absolutely.
And the dance of the father and daughter towards the end of the film is, for me, exquisite, because it's not only the closeness you feel between them, but the ephemerality. You know that the dance will end. You know that the afternoon will end, and that as night comes, Monsieur l'Admiral will be left alone
Absolutely.
again. And so that sense of solitude, and coupled with his own regret that he didn't perhaps become exactly the painter that he wanted to be, the son's regret that he didn't become the son his father might have
Right.
wanted him to be, the daughter's regret that you get at moments when she's struggling with her phone call or lack of it.
Right.
There's some man that she's not exactly connecting with properly. So there's so much that is suggested in the film rather than stated. And ultimately, one of the key reasons that the film works so well, in my opinion, is that Tavernier found a visual style with the cinematographer Bruno de Keyser that expresses, for me,
Right.
some of these themes. I find the camera work in tonight's film remarkable.
I agree with you.
That is a camera so mobile, so curious, literally caressing the characters, as does the music by Gabriel Fauré, I might add. That's wonderful music. And the camera sort of makes you aware of time itself, because early on in the film, it's positioned inside a room. You actually move with the camera to
Absolutely.
the window, and without benefit of montage of cutting up the frame, it reframes so that suddenly the frame of the film is that of the window and you are outside.
I couldn't agree with you more.
And there's just this gentleness of that movement.
Well, there's a way, you know, while we've already talked about the fact that the film has a narrator, that voice, there's a way in which three elements in the film combine so beautifully to narrate the film, that constitute the film's overall narration, which is not the same as anything that the characters themselves experience in their own world, and that is that voice, the camera and its movements and its reframing, because it's independent of the characters. It's observing their world and their life and reframing it, and as you again pointed out, the wonderful use of the period, or it's actually a little bit antecedent, the period music by Gabriel Fauré that comes from this world, but the selection of that and the use of it as non-diegetic music that comes from their historical world, but doesn't come from the immediate story world there, that evokes. And I think that he finds a wonderful combination of those three elements to, again, give us this extremely sympathetic view of the regrets that children have about the fact that their parents are moving on to another stage of their life, the last stage of their lives.
And also the regret that a parent might have, the father's regret. He at one point talks about, I painted the way my teachers taught me to.
Right.
And he refers to other painters of the time, Cézanne, for example. And you get a sense, as Philippe Noiret's character in Life and Nothing But experiences, of what might have been lived differently.
Right.
And I find that terrifically moving. I mean, for me, this is a film of great sensitivity as well as delicacy and of great coherence. I mean, every
Absolutely.
element has been selected so that it really does cohere. When I watched the film with my husband, Mark, who's very perceptive too, he kept saying, you know, this is Chekhovian, don't you?
Yeah.
And I had forgotten that aspect altogether. And of course, that's in there as well. He's quite right that not just because they're living on this, you know, beautiful country estate, whatever, but as he pointed out in Chekhov, very often a character is in love with someone who's not available to him or her. And in this film, as Mark was saying, the father loves, the son loves the father who's kind of not really responsive completely. The father loves the daughter who's about to flit away, and the daughter seems to love this off-screen man that we never meet. So there's that built into it as well.
You know, I'm in complete agreement with Mark about that. And the other reference I would want to bring in, because of the extraordinary sense of visual design in this film, but that's integral to the whole thing, and this whole sense of the dynamics of family, particularly when you have the modern city that may be just off the frame in a way that, that deals with this, is of course the great Japanese filmmaker Ozu. Because the whole notion that we've just been talking about what responsibilities do children have to parents and parents to children, and to what degree, you know, in simplest terms, in all generations, does life intervene between generations, but also to what degree do, you know, very sort of specific historical things intervene. Why must the son have a particular kind of life in Paris, which is not the same set of decisions necessarily as his father? And the daughter who, you know, is recycling the shawls into her shop in Paris. And we see the diminishment of the painter to the retailer.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it. I mean, yeah, I agree with you. I guess with Ozu, there is perhaps a more visible restraint.
Yeah.
In other words, Ozu's style is a much more, I think, minimalist style. One of the things I love about this film is the lushness, to be honest with you.
Absolutely.
Tavernier, who is a great gourmand, by the way, I mean, he loves good food. He has been based in Lyon at times. The gastronomy there would be the best for him. I think that there's a sensuosity that I really do respond to, as a matter of fact. And I find it fascinating, among other things, that Tavernier, who's had such a varied career, I mean, unlike Ozu, I think he's made so many different kinds of films that we can't pin him down.
The same great film over and over again.
Right.
But
Tavernier made this movie, A Sunday in the Country, in between Mississippi Blues and Round Midnight. Right. I mean, what we're talking about here is that in the early 80s, he makes essentially a documentary about American music, about African American culture. And right after Un Dimanche à la Campagne, he makes Round Midnight in English about American jazz, again, African-American culture. And Dimanche à la Campagne, sandwiched in between these two motion pictures, strikes me as one of the most radical manifestations of versatility that I've ever seen.
Well, and I'll just add one film that he makes a little bit later to that, that's thematically linked to this very, very closely, and that's Daddy Nostalgia, which again is about a daughter returning to house of an elderly father, but again, it's filmed in a very different style. Again, the emotional density of the film is relatively, or weight is relatively the same, but he changes. He's dealing with the same theme, the same situation, the same sentiments, but he knows that when he's portraying people living in the 80s or the 90s, he can't do it.
Right.
He can't show it the same way. Each thing he must adapt to.
Well, the casting is so radically different, too, because in that film you have Dirk Bogarde in his return to the screen after many years, and Jane Birkin, who is a bit of an icon in Europe, a little less well known here. What's wonderful about A Sunday in the Country is that Louis Ducreux, who plays Monsieur l'Admiral, nobody had seen this person. It was like, who is this? Is he a painter? And Sabine Azéma was not really all that famous back in 1984. This preceded many of her great films with Alain Resnais. And in fact, I remember that she won, I think, this César. This won 3 of the French Academy Awards that year, if I remember correctly, for cinematography, for Sabine Azéma as Best Actress, and I think for the screenplay. And then I was so pleased because after Tavernier won Best Director at the Cannes Film Festival for this movie, in the United States, not only did Un Dimanche à la Campagne win the New York Film Critics Circle Award for Best Foreign Film, but from the National Board of Review, Best Foreign Film and Best Supporting Actress for Sabine Azéma. So this was a very important motion picture for her career, for Tavernier's career. I would even say for a certain kind of French cinema beyond the borders of France. It did pretty well in this country.
Yes.
And it's not Godard. It's not filled with distancing. It's not filled with young, abrasive characters. It's, you know, I'm referring now to some of the hits of recent directors. It's a classic film. And the fact that it did well is, I think for me, rather heartwarming.
I was about to say, heartening. We're going to have to end today on that heartwarming note, Professor Insdorf. If you'd like more information about this series, about City Cinematheque, or about CUNY TV, should be no surprise, the best way to get it is through the internet. Please visit our website, www.cuny.tv. You can click on City Cinematheque or any of our other programming. Again, the website is www.cuny.tv. Annette, always a pleasure to have you here. I know there's so much more you could say, but 30 minutes is 30
Some
minutes.
other time.
Okay, it's a deal. It's a deal. And please join us once again as we stroll through the archives of film history here on City Cinematheque. Thanks for joining us today. The preceding presentation of City Cinematheque was made possible, in part, by the support of the French Cultural Services. Visit www.frenchculture.org.